Modern society is taking something essential from us, and we don't even realize it's happening. What's being taken is not information, not access, not opportunity. It's your ability to know who you truly are. Modern society shapes your identity long before you're aware of it. What you like, what you want, what you believe about yourself. So by the time you ask, who am I? It already feels like you should know. But most of that answer is not actually yours. For example, your personality traits, what you think is just how you are often adaptations. You become agreeable because you want to be liked, independent because we're more and more disconnected, reserved because expressing your full self isn't welcomed, or high achieving because we live in a society where output is rewarded. Your preferences, what you're drawn to, what you reject, are shaped by what you're exposed to. What you see every day when you open social media, what's promoted, what's visible, what's repeated. And this includes the kind of partner you're attracted to, the kind of lifestyle you aspire to, even what you find beautiful. Your goals, what you feel driven towards, are shaped by what's presented as success. Careers that are presented as respectable, paths that are approved, milestones that signal that you're doing well, the things that promise recognition, status, stability. Even the way you see yourself is shaped, confident or not, worthy or not, capable or not. All of it forms in response to the environment that you're in, to what that environment rewards, discourages, encourages, and makes visible. And because this process happens continuously, as I said, even from before you're born, it doesn't feel like you acquire these things. It feels like just how you are. The troublesome thing is that our identity is not just shaped, it's also constrained in very specific ways. If we don't pay close attention, if we're not vigilant, modern society pushes us towards conformity. This happens quietly, but it's inevitable. Just open any social media app, everyone looks the same. Everyone talks about the same things. Originality is nowhere to be found. As the French philosopher Girard says, we don't want what we want what others want. But there's even more. We're not only encouraged to conform to one another, we're encouraged to define ourselves based on pre-existing social markers. Social markers we're mostly born into. So if you're born in a lower class environment, you're expected to self-identify as a lower class person. And the same goes if you're born in a middle class or upper class upbringing. There's nothing more threatening to the system than social mobility. So we're heavily pushed to operate, dream, and die within the narrow confines of our identity markers. And the real problem is that these are defined from the outside. They pre-exist us. These are things like class, gender, tax bracket, race, and they don't come from within you. In the current system, identity is something that's shaped for us from before we're born. We're constantly feeling the pressure to stay within what's acceptable and within very defined and narrow lines. I remember walking through New York City once and noticing how everyone seemed to be performing a version of themselves. Different styles, different roles, but the same underlying structure. And it struck me how much of what we call identity is something we've learned to enact. It's no surprise that we get so confused when we try to answer the question, who am I? If who we present ourselves to be is constructed, then the idea of a real self starts to become unclear, almost abstract. Because if everything you think you are has been shaped from the outside, then what would it even mean to be yourself? We lack a clear reference point, a stable sense of this is me. You might attempt to build your self concept logically, strategically, through ideas, projections, branding advice, as if you were a product designed for consumption. You look confident from the outside, but you strangely feel empty inside because you don't know who you actually are. Not knowing who you are has serious consequences on your life personally, but also on the collective. Because if you don't know who you are, everything becomes harder than it should be. You don't trust yourself, so you cannot confidently make decisions without overthinking everything. There's no inner signal to guide you. You rely exclusively on external references. What makes sense, what looks right, what other people are doing. And that leads to choices that don't fully fit. If you don't have a clear sense of identity, you also choose the wrong mates and partners and the wrong relationships. You don't know how to recognize when someone is truly right for you. You pursue goals that you were told were worthy, but that don't actually fulfill you. And you don't know what you truly want because your inner compass is pointing in the wrong direction. You're confused about your own desires. Over time, a gap starts to form between the life you're living and the life that would actually feel like truly yours. Because without access to yourself, you can build a life that works but doesn't feel real. Leaving aside the question of what is the real self and if it even exists, let's now tackle the question of how do you actually access your true self when who you think you are is not who you actually are. You don't find yourself by thinking about it. You don't arrive at yourself through ideas. You access yourself, the core who you truly are, through immediate contact with reality. Philosophy calls it immanence, which means contact with the material world, with your body, with your immediate experience, with that energy that allowed St. Francis to talk to the birds or tame the wolf. Underneath all the conditioning, there is still a signal, alive and pulsating. You've just forgotten how to access it. Modern society makes this signal very faint, drawn out by overthinking, social media, endless comparison. The goal is not to arrive at a clear cut definition of yourself. The goal is not figuring out who you are. The goal is direct experience with reality. It begins with you paying attention to what affects you, what feels alive, what feels heavy, what expands you, what contracts you. You let things land without immediately interpreting them, without turning them into a story, without worrying about what's acceptable or what other people are doing. And slowly, this process actually takes a while. Something starts to become clear, not as an idea, but as direct experience. You begin to recognize what is actually yours. And from there, your decisions become simpler, your actions become more direct, not because you discovered some magic formula, but because you're no longer disconnected from your own life. That's how you find who you are, by feeling before interpreting, sensing before explaining, living instead of watching yourself live, questioning all the programming you've internalized. You don't need to define who you are. The self is always in motion, it's always growing, always expanding. But what you need to do is to feel who you are and shape your life around that. You don't need a better self-concept. You don't need more confidence. You need access to your own experience. Hey, thank you for watching. If what I'm sharing resonates with you, make sure you hit subscribe to be notified when new videos are released. And if you want to go deeper, I share longer reflections, frameworks, and updates in my newsletter. The link is below. This channel is a growing body of work about restoring aliveness in a world that quietly trains you to live at a distance from your own life.